Ladies and gentlemen, this is Tosh Berman of Tosh Talks, and today we're going to discuss a book that has my two favorite subject matters of all time. The artist Yves Klein and the country of Japan, at last together in one book. And this is the book in question, Yves Klein Japan, published by Editions DILECTA, if I'm not pronouncing it correctly. And what I find fascinating about this book is that Yves Klein spent at least 15 months in Japan. He first arrived there in 1952, and he left in 1953. And the reason he was in Japan was to study Judo. And before that, in Paris, he was very much a student of Judo. He studied Judo and made a decision, a very important decision, to actually go to Japan to study the martial art. And he did so. And this is this is obviously post-war Japan. And not that many people traveled to Japan at that time, especially if you're European. Yves Klein came from an artistic background. Both of his parents were painters. His parents were Fred Klein and mother is Marie Raymond. Both were painters. And both were sort of well-known painters at the time, though not really famous now or much attention is paid to them, but they were established painters of their time. And it was pretty much expected that Yves Klein himself would be a painter or an artist. But Klein sort of went against the family tradition to study Judo. He went to Japan in 1952, just for the sole purpose of studying Judo. But while he was there, he did get himself involved in some artistic leanings of sort. He arranged an exhibit for his parents while he was in Japan, for them to have a show in Japan at a gallery. So he did keep his hands in the art landscape while he was there. Now, the interesting thing about Yves Klein in Japan is, although he is French, I often think of him as sort of a Japanese-style artist. Now, when I say that, of course I'm being very surface, on a very surface level, because obviously he is not Japanese. Though Yves Klein, I think, picked up certain Japanese aesthetics through his interest in Judo that somehow transformed into his artistic aesthetic at the time and afterward. So his sense of space and color, I think, would not happen if he did not go to Japan in the 50s. In the 40s, he wrote a music piece called Monotone Symphony. And what that piece was, he wrote it in 1949. And what that piece consists of is an orchestra, a small orchestra, playing one note, sustained note, for 20 minutes. Then 20 minutes silence. So the whole piece is 40 minutes long. So even in the late 40s, Yves Klein was thinking of performance art or being a performance artist, or as well as doing serious music at the time. Now you wouldn't think, well, that monotone symphony sounds very much like a John Cage's 4:33, 4 minutes and 33 seconds. But alas, who came first? Yves Klein or John Cage? Klein wrote his piece in 1949, and John Cage wrote his 4 minutes and 33 in 1952. They may have never heard of each other at the time. Things happen in the air, so it's not like who's first is important, really, but the fact what's in the air. And like John Cage, I think Yves Klein was influenced by Asian aesthetic or Japanese aesthetic of sort, where silence is just as important as sound. Again, I'm being very surfacey in saying that is a specific Asian or Japanese aesthetic. But there is a sense of importance or equal importance with sound and silence, I think, in Japanese culture. And I believe this is what he learned in Japan. Now, this book, Yves Klein Japan, doesn't really cover about his music or his art that much. It's really a scrapbook. partly put together by the editors of this book, as well as by what he made there. He made his own journals there. He sent letters out and postcards to his friends and parents while he was in Japan, and he did a lot of artwork on the postcards. And Yves Klein traveled around Japan, and one thing that really struck me is like, oh wow, to have a moment while looking at this magnificent book, is that he went to an island called Oshima in the Izu preference or area of Japan. And Oshima is an island that's about 3 hours away or 2.5 hours away from Tokyo. And it's a very remote island. Nothing's on there except for a living volcano, which means it could erupt in any second. And legend has it, because it became a movie, Godzilla lived there. Godzilla lived in that volcano. Yves Klein was there in 1952 or 1953. There's pictures of the island here. That's kind of magnificent. And what's remarkable is I was exactly in the same spot as Yves Klein. I know, right now you're thinking like, you gotta be joking, but no, I was there in the year 2015 or something like that. The island hasn't changed at all since the 50s. I recommend if you ever go to Japan, you ever go to Tokyo, you may want to take this side trip to this island, Oshima. Klein acknowledges how surreal the landscape of that island is, because it is a living volcano area, and all the rocks are like black or dark gray, and there's no color except outside of the volcano area. But a big part of the volcano area is totally like, looks like the moon or a planet, from outer space. Beautiful landscape, but very eerie and very, you get like an emotional feeling about it, because it's sort of like death, sort of like death as it happens. And of course it has the thing about the fire and the flames, which actually became a huge big part of Yves Klein's work and his paintings, where he became totally obsessed with the idea of fire and flames and the elements of sorts. Very much part of Yves Klein's work. But beyond that, if you're into Yves Klein, you're going to find this book fascinating, because it deals with his early influences and his early life. If you're into Japan culture, it's like a great picture of Japan or Tokyo in 1952 and 1953. Another thing I want to make a note of is that when you, as a foreigner or a traveler who first come to Japan, for me, the first impression was when it became nighttime in Tokyo and the lights came on, the neon lights. And for me at the time, when I first saw this, it was like such a phenomenal thing to see, because the lighting is so different from anywhere else in the world. And neon light is neon light, yes, but the way the Japanese or in Asia portray neon lighting on signs or side of buildings, it's really, really spectacular. And it's interesting to note that Yves Klein's first time in Tokyo, that first night, he noticed the same thing. So now we've got two things compared to me and Yves Klein. We're both obsessed with neon lighting in Tokyo, and we've both been on the island Oshima. The big difference is I don't paint, he paints, but that's just a very small difference, really. But this book is really a remarkable book. It's a great scrapbook. You get like his letters, his notes. And while he was in Japan, he put a book together. When I was in Japan, I put a book together as well. So we have another thing in common, three things. Yves Klein's book that he put together is The Foundations of Judo. And The Foundations of Judo is basically how to do judo, written by and put together by Yves Klein. But there's also a lot of photographs of Yves Klein in judo positions with another person. So this is not an art book. This is not like an artist book, but it's an actual judo manual that Yves Klein put together, a black belt at the time. This is a really remarkable book. I really strongly recommend it. Again, if you're into Japanese culture or you're into Yves Klein, if you're into both, you must have the book. It's an essential buy or to have. And this is Tosh Berman. This is Tosh Talks. Thank you.